twisted new season of The Traitors is finally here.
What did I get myself into?
The prize, $250,000.
I'm gonna lie and cheat and do whatever I have to do to win.
If you're gonna come for me, I'll finish you.
Shame on you!
I'm out for blood.
It is like a firing squad. Boom, 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 boom.
Let the games begin. Emmy Award winner, The Traitors. New episodes streaming Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, only on Peacock.
How the heck are you?
I'm very good, thanks. Well, strictly speaking, of course, you asked me this question last week and the week before, but due to international Playboy commitments and technical difficulties, we were unable to bring you Rantcast for 2 weeks in a row.
So if you want to know what happened to what should have been Rantcasts 144 and 145, the first episode was recorded before Ed went on a little jaunt to Barcelona for work, and then he couldn't find the time whilst in Barcelona to edit the podcast. Did manage to find the time to go and see the Classico, but we won't hold that against him, will we, listeners? We talked about this then on episode 145, as it should have been, which didn't get released because despite the fact that we spent 40 minutes setting up the recording and then an hour and a bit recording, the recording was lost in the midst of some bizarre curse that befell the Rantcast for a couple of weeks. But hopefully, touch wood, the curse has been lifted by Roy Keane's controversy and Jose Mourinho's clear desire for the job, Cristiano Ronaldo's heartbreaking return, and a couple of absolute wonder goals that United have scored since we were last on the metaphorical airwaves.
Well, indeed. Of course, you know what has really happened? The Gilluminati have had their own back, you know? We took them down by exposing the dark deeds that David Gill has been doing, and he's been forced to resign as Manchester United chief executive as a result. This was their final curse on the Rantcast, to destroy a couple of weeks' worth of recordings.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we did talk at some length about Gills. I can't remember what really happened and what just happened between the two of us now, but we talked at some length about Edward Woodward being the man who's going to replace David Gill at the helm, and some of our concerns about the fact that he's a business guy, not a football guy, which means Sir Alex is obviously going to have a pretty key role in appointing his own successor.
Well, and in fact, Alex said that he'll be joining the board of directors, so let's combine a couple of stories into one there. Yeah, Gill's gone and a slimy marketing guy has replaced him. No, not Peter Kenyon, but Edward Woodward, also known as the Equaliser. Is he trying to equalise anything? Maybe, because he's on such a bent to increase United's commercial revenues that United are actually on course to catch up with Real Madrid and Barcelona in their money leagues. But we'll see where that goes over the next few years. And Ferguson talked quite openly a couple of weeks ago about becoming a director at Manchester United. So that whole thesis about him riding off into the sunset and having nothing to do with football again, as he once promised, appears like it won't come true.
No, so he's going to have Matt Busby's old office then at Old Trafford and cast a shadow both in statue, stadium name, stand name and actual physical presence over whoever gets the job next. I have to say, at the end of the Madrid game, Mourinho slipped out. I mean, quite a different story to some of his victories at Old Trafford over the years. Slipped off quietly just before the end of the game to avoid kind of attracting any attention to himself, thus massively attracting a load of attention to himself. But a gesture of humility and contrition to the Old Trafford faithful who he'll soon be serving on their touchline.
That's one way of spinning it, of course, yeah, that he's so desperate to get the United job that he was prepared to move every PR mountain in order to quell any disquiet from the United fans after the game. I mean, he did say, and we'll come on to talk about the Real Madrid game, of course, but he did say things like the best side lost, and I can't understand why it was a card. It could easily have been a yellow, and so on and so on and so on. He's been very humble in the past week, hasn't he? You know, angling for a job much.
Yeah, very clearly. At least keeping the option firmly alive, isn't he, of being Sir Alex's successor. Alright, so there's been a bunch of football before the Madrid thing even happened. I haven't been able to read any of the post-Madrid articles or even watch the GIFs on Beautifully Read yet. I'm hoping that talking about it on the podcast sort of flushes it out the system and we can all get a bit of collective catharsis. Let's look back. The QPR game happened, notable for two things. One, an absolute three things, obviously. A wonder goal by Rafael, a very, very fine goal by the actually ageless Ryan Giggs, and the emergence of a brand new chant that's actually a few years old, but it's caught off in a big way, and it's Carrick, it's hard to believe it's not Scholes. 25 minutes of songs for Michael Carrick. I waxed lyrical about how happy this made me on our Lost podcast. It's lovely to hear him get his own song at long last, Ed.
Well, very much so, and he deserves it. Although, it's a slightly weird one, of course, because it's quite hard to believe he's not Scholes because he's about 6'2" and got brown hair and he's from Newcastle.
Yeah, but
just to be a pedant about it. But yeah, very nice to see Michael Carrick getting the recognition his performances over the last couple of years have very much deserved. On the other points, Ryan Giggs, definitely not ageless, but aging very well. And Rafael, the best goal he'll ever score by some distance. Best view of that goal from behind the goal, just to watch it flash into the top corner and Julio Cesar completely beaten, barely moved.
Yeah, you can't really use pedantry to attack football chants because Wayne Rooney doesn't play very much like Pelé at all. I'm pretty sure almost everyone that sings that song has something they enjoy doing more than kicking a blue.
Oh, I don't know about that. Have you kicked a blue recently?
No, not...
let's just think this through logically. How many blues have you kicked in the last week?
I've never kicked a blue, Ed.
Well, there you go. How do you know that you wouldn't enjoy it?
I'm pretty confident. It doesn't sound like my sort of thing. Doesn't sound like my cup of tea, unlike making a brew. What I like best is making a brew. This is because people have said they're sad not to hear the singing, and also some people have said the only good thing about there being no podcast has been no singing. So anyway, that's almost all the singing for the day. The QPR game was noteworthy also for the fact that United put a really professional performance together and marched on towards this apparently inevitable league title, although after last season it seems crazy to talk about that. But it does feel more and more like that, especially after we tore Norwich apart. A really, really odd performance from United. Very flat, actually, in some ways, and sort of lacking in fluency until we went 2-0 up, at which point we became unstoppable goal machines, and Shinji Kagawa scored one of my favourite hat-tricks in United history.
Yeah, love the hat-trick. Great first goal, poked it with the outside of his right foot. Second goal, gave the keeper and the entire defence the eyes, and they all went the wrong way as he just kind of rolled it in. Gareth Barry style. He's obviously been learning from the Blues across town. And then a well-taken third. Of course, it flattered United. The scoreline for so long in that game, United were 1-0 up and not really looking like going to score a cricket score, but Norwich caved in the end. United got all those goals, and I think at the time it gave United another 15-point lead. We seem to have been bouncing between 12 and 15 points for a few weeks now.
Yeah, well, we absolutely have, because we keep playing before City and then they keep winning their thoroughly winnable games, like Villa away, where they didn't manage to pull off the upset we assumed would be the lead-in to the Madrid game. Kagawa's hat-trick, 4-0, you can say it flattered United for performance, but that's not really true when you take into account the 90 minutes. It definitely would have flattered United's first 60 minutes performance, but then actually after that they really did genuinely take off, and Kagawa was ruthless. And Rooney had a really poor game, but had 2 assists and a wonder goal, which is a very odd thing to say. But, we kind of thought that Kagawa hat-trick and Rooney's goal made them pretty much dead certs to start against Real Madrid, so I guess we got to talk about that, which I don't particularly want to talk about, but it was a really truly extraordinary occasion, and it didn't finish in our favour, but much to take pride in from the Reds' performance against Madrid, I thought, Ed.
Well, yeah, it was a fine performance for some time, wasn't it, from United? Let's go back right to the beginning. Rooney and Kagawa left out. Rooney, pretty surprising, really, because whatever you think of his form in the last couple of games, he's still a kind of fulcrum around which United's attacking movement is built. And interesting that they didn't really massively change the shape of the United side. Actually, Danny Welbeck ended up playing off Van Persie, so Welbeck was just selected ahead of Rooney, although Mike Phelan said it was tactical. It it really wasn't. Welbeck was just selected ahead of Rooney there, which is pretty surprising given that Welbeck's return of 2 goals this season is some way behind Rooney's. So there's that big shock. And then Ryan Giggs started, didn't half feel sentimental, that one. And then Nani started, not exactly had the best of the season. So there were some pretty weird selections, I suppose. But then United came out and played really, really well for the first half hour or so, didn't they? And took control of the game.
Yeah, and I think Ferguson essentially proved that Giggs was anything but a sentimental selection, and he brought him on to play a very specific... He played right wing for a lot of the game, which is so peculiar. And he was marking Ronaldo a lot of the time, which I genuinely wonder if it was a bit of a psychological trick by Ferguson, because the whole thing was set up. Patrice said, how do you deal with Ronaldo? He was asked. We have to kill him with love. And what is really, truly extraordinary is that kind of worked. So United's Tannoy announcer, they normally announce the names of the players in numerical order, right, throughout the teams, but this time they didn't. They switched up the Real Madrid team announcement so that Ronaldo's name was at the end of the whole big spiel, and welcome back number 7, Cristiano Ronaldo, at which point Old Trafford went absolutely nuts, and you could genuinely see it getting to Ronaldo, and I really think he slightly underperformed. I mean, that's what he said of his own performance. And I don't think that was after the fact revisionism. I think that's actually what happened. What did you make of his performance and his return and the brouhaha?
Well, he scored the winning goal. So, I mean, I suppose you could say that the emotion and the occasion affected him, which, of course, Jose Mourinho said afterwards as well. So maybe it did, but he still scored the winning goal, scored 2 goals over the 2 legs. So he was the difference between the 2 sides.
Yeah, I don't think he was the difference between the 2 sides, really.
Well, he scored 2 goals. I hate to get all clinical and factual about this, but he scored more goals than anyone else over the 2 sides, and he got Madrid back into the first leg, and he scored a winning goal at Old Trafford on Tuesday night.
Yeah, but the goal that he scored at Old Trafford was a tap-in, basically. I mean, it was a smart run or whatever, but there were a few occasions late on in the game where he really had the chance to put it to bed, and I think Ronaldo, at his best, certainly would have done, but actually didn't really trouble the hair at all. So you're right. I mean, he obviously had a telling role in the 2 ties, but he didn't rip United apart as I sort of feared he would, and I actually think United did a really good job tactically, except for my broad overall assessment is absolutely full of positives about that tie. I think the tactics, although they seemed positively Tombola-esque, actually turned out to be a really smart, calculated thing that was very effective. And actually, if Robin van Persie had his shooting boots on, then it could have all been so very different, both in Madrid and at United. And I think we were punished in the end for not taking our chances in the Bernabeu, right? That was where the tie was lost in so many ways, I think. Because we were so effective and defensively excellent up until the point of the sending off. We obviously nudged in front with that goal, which, that doesn't really swing the balance of power of the tie, does it, when you've got a score draw from the away leg and then the home team score? The balance of the tie is not the earth-shaking effect that a goal normally has on a football match.
Well, no, because Real Madrid still had to score.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I know what you're saying. I mean, and United were good for the 48 minutes up to the goal that Ramos scored through his own net, and sure, the tactics worked, and United quite happy to concede possession, but managed to create chances on the break. Had quite a number of shots throughout the game, really, although Madrid also had very many too, not quite as many as the 30 odd they had in the first leg, of course. So just about it worked for United, and just about United were in there, even though Madrid were always a threat, and just about, and absolutely the Nani sending off completely changed the complexion of the game as a result.
Yeah, and I think whatever you say about the rights and wrongs of the sending off, and to me I think it's pretty straightforward that in the cold light of day it's not a sending off, but I can definitely see how the referee would do it, and I think the fact that Nani, after making contact, did the injury feigning thing that players do when they've got a guilty conscience, really badly affected his cause, because it made the whole thing look worse. But I think the really key thing is there was that kind of sort of weirdly comical shot, then it cut to Fergie and you saw him kind of trying to get up and shoving Albert the kit man out the way, and just an absolute ball of rage. and then he kind of went to the four corners of the stadium and did a bit of cheerleading as if to say, come on, we need you, let's get back into this. But Mourinho instantly changed the substitution he was going to make, completely shifted the tactical balance of the game, and Fergie, having out Mourinho for a leg and a half, then suddenly it all went to pot because he didn't do anything about it at that time.
Well, that is true, and that's one way of analysing it, that Mourinho got the substitutions right and affected the game, which he did. I'm not sure it's quite fair, though, given that we're playing against one of the sides that really are very good in an attacking sense and would be able to exploit the extra space that comes with having an extra man, you know. So I'm not sure there's much Ferguson could have done except for go super defensive.
Yeah, but I think that both he and the team lost their composure for 10 minutes after that. And, you know, look, I'm absolutely not having a massive go, because as I said, I think Ferguson did a magnificent job for most of that tie, and the team did a magnificent job for most of that tie. But, you know, our defending definitely suffered, not from the realities of having 10 men, but from the massive knock to the confidence that everyone clearly took in that moment, because, you know, we were playing with such bags full of confidence in defence. We were cutting out passes I've not seen us cut out all season. You know, we were playing with this fierce intensity. I saw a really good write-up of the game. I think it might have been by @LRob, but I read a load of previews all in one go about, you know, it could come down to the fact that this means more to Madrid than it means to United, this tie, because they're not in any other competition, and this is La Decima and all that business. But for us, you know, the league was nicked off us at the last minute by Man City, so this is definitely everyone's kind of second most important tournament this season. But the team did not play like that at all. The team played like, you know, excuse the massive cliche, but they played like a bunch of lions. They were absolutely fierce and determined and hunted in packs and played with this pressing and intensity when Madrid had possession, and really didn't give away any brilliant counter-attacking opportunities until really late in the game.
Well, yeah, and that for all those reasons is why the sending off has sent United into such shock, really, and Ferguson was extremely angry and rightly so, right? And that's why he refused to take the press conference afterwards, and he refused to allow any of his players to talk to the press, because it was completely and utterly pivotal in a match that United had taken control of. And, you know, we can't get away from that without wanting to sound bitter or anything like that. It's the moment of the two ties that has decided these two ties, right? And without that, just looking objectively at how the game was going on Tuesday night, United would have won that game. It didn't look like Madrid could get back into it. And, you know, quite possibly United would have gone on to score more. So the sending off changed it completely. Ferguson reacted in a different way to Mourinho. I'm not sure he had that many choices. The only choice he could have done would be to have gone ultra defensive very, very quickly, sink everyone back in, defend their own box, and hope that Madrid couldn't use some of their brilliant players to score the goals necessary. As it turned out, they actually scored one very fine goal anyway. So it's really hard to separate out the sending off from the ultimate result.
It is. I do agree with that, obviously, but then, you know, United also had opportunities to make that sending off matter less, you know, to change the old chaos theory of the game by taking their chances in Madrid, and we did wonder how much we would rue them. But, you know, the whole thing is balanced on these moments. Did you think he was going to pull out a red card when all the delay was happening? I must say I was not surprised at all to see the red card. I kind of felt it in me waters, actually.
Well, I mean, I didn't think for a moment it was a red card offence, not for even a slight moment at all. I mean, you see that kind of thing over and over again. You know, this is not Nigel de Jong in the World Cup final, you know, against Alonso. This was a player who's just trying to control the ball, and momentum took him into the opposition player. So, no, from that point of view, I didn't think so. But then again, this is the Champions League, and you do get decisions where there's a kind of controversial physical moment that turn out to be red cards when you wouldn't expect them in the Premier League. And that's nothing to do necessarily a foul. It's an interpretation of what's dangerous or not. In the Premier League, there generally has to be some intent, plus for it to be dangerous play, the potential to injure somebody. And I don't think there would ever have been a red card in the Premier League.
No, I mean, in slow motion and stuff, it's very clear that he's just doing that thing he does where he jumps and sticks his foot out in the air to catch the ball and then legs it up the pitch, then blasts it over mostly. But, you know, sometimes it goes well. Scott from the Republic of Mancunian made the point that really it's kind of comparable with the moment in the first half when Diego Lopez punches Vidic in the head because he's going for the ball and misses and catches the player. So then is that not dangerous play? A big man swinging his fist at head height. I mean, I guess it's slightly different because Nani's got his boot way up in the air, so it's less natural. But still, the man really did punch Vidic quite hard, didn't he?
Well, the point being that Law 12 has always been based around actions, not consequences. And this was the other way round, right? So if it's about actions and having your foot at head height is dangerous just because your foot is at head height, it's dangerous, then we should have sent Wayne Rooney off for scoring that brilliant overhead kick against Manchester City a few years back. If a defender had put his head in the way there, he'd taken his head clean off. Well, not literally, although he would have been literally kicking the blue. It's the best thing he could have done.
He's always a blue though, so that he sings that when he stubs his toe, he sings what I hate most is kicking a blue. Talking of which, what did you make of the decision to leave him out?
Well, I thought it was pretty bizarre, and look, no matter the fact that he didn't play that well against Norwich, he did create 2 goals and scored an absolute blinder. He's the one player that can play in that kind of position and link midfield and attack. I think when he's in the side, United, for the most part, are a better team. He's still United's most complete and all-round footballer. So for all those reasons, even if he didn't play well in the previous game, he's in there. And tactically speaking, he chases back, he defends, he's disciplined enough to drop into midfield. I don't think there's anything that Welbeck gives in that sense. They didn't use Welbeck as the front man to try and stretch the game or anything like that. There wasn't a major change in United's tactics. I mean, a few players in slightly odd positions, like you mentioned, Ryan Giggs, but that's not how they used Welbeck, and Rooney could have played wide if he'd wanted him to do that. I mean, so for all those reasons, it just seemed a little odd. Of course, as it turned out, for 50 odd minutes, United played really well, and the decision was vindicated because of that. Still seemed pretty odd at the time.
I think United's man of the tie, the two legs, was clearly Danny Welbeck. De Gea edging it in the Bernabeu, but Welbeck was excellent there and phenomenal again. And he's a big game player, isn't he? He seems to really relish the big occasion, and I thought he was just wonderful again, really. Yeah,
but look, let's be objective about this. If you were to pick between Welbeck and Rooney as who is going to cause more damage to the opposition, who's going to be the most effective, who's a better player, you pick Rooney every single time.
You do, but then I'm umming and ahhing a bit because I'm struggling to slightly to articulate this a slightly half-formed thought I have about the fact that it was tactical, but not in the sense of the role that was played by Welbeck, but the way he would play that role versus the way that Rooney would play that role. He obviously gave Madrid's defenders something to think about that they weren't expecting to think about. I mean, one of the things that I do wonder about is how much is Ferguson's treatment of Rooney. I mean, there's been today in particular, not so much yesterday, the day after the tie, but today the papers have been absolutely full of talk of Rooney leaving in the summer and a lot of mention of his fitness to the extent that I wonder whether Ferguson's people or Ferguson have been briefing about it in the press somehow, and there's some briefing and counter briefing going on, or if it's just the fact that there's a bunch of column inches to fill today and it's a kind of obvious story.
Well, I think it's more of the latter. The view that Rooney may well leave at some point has not gone away for nearly 3 years, right? So, or 2.5 or so. So it's not like this is a new one. So every time Rooney isn't in the first team, this one resurfaces again, and the biggest game of the season, it was inevitable that this would be coming up to the surface again because it's an easy conclusion to make. Now, have Ferguson's people been briefing that he wasn't fair? I'm not sure about that, because I'm not sure that Ferguson is ever that underhand. He doesn't feel the need to justify his decisions in the press like that, and he disdains the fact that he has to justify any of his selection decisions in the media. So I'm not sure I buy any theory that Ferguson somehow needs to slander Rooney. If he's fallen out with him, he's just not going to play him, and then he'll get rid of him at the end of the season. It doesn't appear that there's any suggestion of that, though, so we'll see. I suspect it's 2 and 2 equals 5. Doesn't mean that Rooney won't go at some point, though, because there's long been a feeling that United would cash in. And we've talked about that many, many times.
Yeah, absolutely. A fascinating decision to start with Nani, who's been so out of favour of the team, and actually cleverly hasn't played for a long time either. And it's almost like there's been a lot of, like, there was quite a lot of surprise that Fergie played Rooney and RVP against Norwich. But now the more that I think about it, because I kind of wondered why he did that, the more that I think about it, the more I think actually he's trying to play RVP back into form. And he doesn't think that he needs a rest. He needs, because Robin, since that first leg against Madrid, has not been playing to his usual impeccable standards.
Right, well, he scored once in 8, and actually I think he looks a bit tired, so I wonder whether rest wouldn't actually help him.
More to the point, I wonder if a rest would not have already helped him. You know, if he hadn't played against Norwich, would he have been able to be more effective against Madrid? But, you know, there's so many what-ifs. The what-if Nani hadn't played and Kagawa had played instead. But I think basically the way things went until that sending off, you can't really argue with any of the decisions Ferguson made, because we were in control of the tie until a refereeing error forced us to play with one less man against Madrid. Now, there's a broad point I wanted to make, really, which is that if you and I had a conversation, and in fact I think we may have had a similar conversation to this at the beginning of the season, about what would happen if United met Real Madrid in the knockout stages of the Champions League this season, I think both of us would have felt that there would have been a very significant, tangible difference in quality between the sides, and actually we would have been quite badly exposed against Madrid. And you have to, well, you don't have to say anything. For me, I have to say that Manchester United right now today are definitely a better side than I thought they were. And it's not that they're flawless by any means. It's not that there aren't problems with the squad. But there is an awful lot right now. Perhaps more than there has been since Ronaldo left.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely, because the results prove the opposite theory wrong, don't they? You know, if you'd given me United v Real Madrid as a potential round of 16 tie a few months ago, I'd have said that Real Madrid would have probably smashed United and they were a good chunk better. But it hasn't turned out to be the case. Yeah, Ferguson, for the most part, got his tactics pretty spot on. I mean, pretty negative in the first leg and trying to control in the second leg, but he got it right. He got it right. He's eking out the maximum possible from this side, and there are definite flaws, but it's really hard to argue with 12 points ahead in the Premier League, a quarter-final in the FA Cup coming up against Chelsea, and very, very unlucky not to beat Real Madrid in the round of 16 in the Champions League. So hard to argue with any of that. This is clearly a good side. I'd still argue it's not Ferguson's best ever. Of course, if United win the double from here, having been very unlucky to be knocked out of the Champions League, then I'll be proved wrong on that one too.
Yeah, I mean, not the best ever. I think, you know, I think what this team is aiming for is third best ever, you know, because that's the position that's available. I think your 93-94 team and your 98-99 team are your 1 and 2, right? And 2008 is probably at the moment in third place, and that's the one that maybe is turnoverable. That's a terrible phrase, but you know what I mean. Overturnable, the Ronaldo United. But we might still win the double, and the position we're in the league is just ridiculously good. And I have to say, I wasn't really complacent about the league at all. I haven't been at all complacent about the league until after the Madrid game, and I was like, oh, it's all right, we'll win the league. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute, what if we don't win the league? That'd be terrible.
Before we move on to the season ahead, I mean, I think it'd be good to talk about some of the punditry, because it has caused some controversy here. One, Royston Keane saying that the referee absolutely got it right, and some ex-Reds coming out and saying he's just jealous and he's seeking attention. What do you make of this one?
I don't think he's jealous or seeking attention. I think he's just being Roy Keane, you know. I think he was in a bad mood, and he has got... I don't know. I don't like to speak for him because I don't know him, but I definitely think he has some pretty negative feelings towards Sir Alex and United as an institution because of the way it went down with him. And it seems weird for Roy Keane to be saying, oh, I agree with the ref, that was a red, because pretty sure his career was pretty rife with things that he would have... I think if he'd done it and been sent off for it, he wouldn't have been too happy, that's for sure.
Well, no, quite, and nor any of his players either. I'm not sure there's too many other pundits that have said it should have been a red, and plenty of managers and players have come out and said it was a pretty ridiculous decision. In fact, I think really there's only two camps that think it should have been a red, and that's supporters of a nature other than United and Roy Keane.
Yeah, who I think is a supporter of nature other than United, but I'm not going to suddenly lose all respect for Roy Keane. Like, if you're going to have held Roy Keane in any kind of esteem, you've got to understand that there's an inherent ambivalence in Roy Keane. You know, he is not a straightforward character. He never has been a straightforward character. And, you know, the kind of combative, ferocious will to be right and will to win was what everybody loved about him. So it seems a bit like now he's sort of become a pundit and has a sort of some sort of point to prove. And maybe he does have a bit of bitterness towards Sir Alex. But in his defence, I think he was treated pretty shoddily by the club.
So one of the other pundits said some interesting things was Graham Poll, the referee, ex-referee, now mouthpiece, who said that far from being punished, the Turkish referee Cuneyt Cakir, I'll say that right because lose a couple of letters there and you might get a more appropriate description. Far from being punished, he'd be congratulated by UEFA because UEFA is on this bent to rid the game of any kind of physical contact, which is an interesting analysis of it, that although managers and players worldwide think this is a nonsense because Nani is clearly trying to just control the ball, that UEFA wants to get any physical nature out of the game, anything dangerous they want to rid from the game, and that they'll be happy with that red card.
Gosh, it's an interesting take on things. United have not been charged by UEFA for any kind of disrepute stuff, and actually, I to be honest, I think if we'd been charged, we would not have had a leg to stand on because the team. But you know, we all made fun of Chelsea for what happened after that Barcelona game, and United were no better. Rio Ferdinand sarcastically applauding the referee at the end of the game.
I always think that's the best one, though, isn't it? You know, it's just a take down the referee with mocking. Because, they surrounded the ref. There was clearly anger from Ferguson, who was not exactly polite to the fourth official, and the sarcastic applause and all of that. And then, of course, you know, the failure to fulfil media duties afterwards. Not that I really care too much about that one. But, yeah, sure, you know, I don't think United have behaved that well. But then the decision was so shocking that it would have been, there'd been a remarkable amount of self-control to have not behaved that way. Let's put it like that.
I don't think they should be pilloried or anything for it, but I think if a UEFA charge had been labelled, you wouldn't. I'm sure United fans would have been outraged, but I don't really think you'd have much of a leg to stand on, actually. But it hasn't happened, so we've been let off that for some reason. I want to go back to Ronaldo just briefly. I have to say that the whole thing, I was left more moved than I expected to be by Ronaldo's the interaction between Ronaldo and the crowd. First of all, as well, I've got to say the atmosphere at Old Trafford was, I mean, I only watched it on telly, sadly, but it looked just genuinely magical. Like, I barely remember it being like that for such a long time, and the, you know, the ground was completely transformed. It felt like a completely different place. Rio said it was the loudest he'd ever experienced anywhere in his career, which, I mean, I don't know if he's partly obviously going to big up United fans or whatever, but it was incredible, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, fantastic atmosphere, and it takes a night like that to generate that kind of atmosphere at Old Trafford these days. Of course, Ria's played in Turkey, and there's some interesting fans there, so I'm not quite sure United fans are quite like that. When we're in Old Trafford 3 hours before the game making that kind of noise, when United are about to play Wigan in the League Cup... under 12's version, then we're the same. Then that's proper fandom.
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of that, wasn't there? There's a bit of like, I was all very well getting up for the one against Madrid, but I think rather than bemoan the fact that we don't do it against Wigan, I kind of want to celebrate the fact that it happened at all. But the Ronaldo thing, I don't know, there was something really special about it, and you know, neither of us are Ronaldo fanboys by any stretch of the imagination. You know, I always found him very difficult to take at the club because he's Ronaldo, but he's an incredible player and all that sort of thing, and all that's completely obvious. But there was something about the way that the crowd responded to his arrival and his response to that, and his kind of the muted celebration for the goal, and that's, you know, it's all much of a muchness. And then at the end of the game, again, very kind of muted and very clearly affected by the esteem that United fans hold him in, and the kind of outpouring of unconditional love that he's not necessarily felt elsewhere. And all this by way of saying, Chevrolet, sign him up. Chevrolet, sign him up.
Right. Well, look, you've made the analogy before, saying it's like an ex-girlfriend who's going out with another man. You know, it can't quite get over him. It's worse than that. It's an ex-girlfriend going out with another man who's taken us on a date after many years, and on the side, while we're having this date, has been chatting up another bloke at the bar, right? Because he scored 2 goals to knock United out. So let's not pretend there's all this love. Yeah, we gave him all the love. He still knocked us out.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's his job, isn't it? But I don't know. I thought it was different than I expected. That's the thing. That it had more genuine heart in it than I expected.
He's charmed you. He's used his charm, but really, on the side, he's been going out with another bloke. If you get my meaning.
Yeah. Well, you know, he can do that, can't he? That's the thing. I just thought it was worthy of note. It was clearly a noteworthy experience, the whole thing. But I guess we have to pick it ourselves up and move on. Much like you have to when that good-looking ex who was no good for you anyway goes off with another man. You've got to do it when your football team loses. And in order to help you, the listeners to the United Rant podcast, move on from this tragic event, I bring good news, and that is that we've got a fantastic prize to give away. On Twitter you can find this gentleman at Chinatown Branch, and you can also find him at chinatownbranch.com, an artist called Brendan Higgins who paints the most spectacular... I don't know much about art, but I know what I like, as they say. But I'm going to use the word impressionistic images of United and Old Trafford, and just absolutely phenomenal. And Brendan's been kind enough to say that he'll be happy to give away a set of 3 prints to the Rantcast listener who best answers the question: which artist best reflects your favourite United player and why? And use the hashtag Rantcast to submit your answer to that question, and head over to Chinatown Branch, chinatownbranch.com. Lots of different very beautiful images over there, but you'll find all the United stuff in a gallery on its own. And Brendan will ship out 3 prints if you answer that question: which artist best reflects your favourite United player and why? You send that answer and me and Ed will pick our favourite, and our favourite will win 3 prints.
Well, I mean, it's going to have to be Mark Rothko, because there's something deeply moving but slightly insane about it. And clearly my favourite player is Royston Keane.
That's good. I think, it's pretty obvious for me, but he's got to be French, right? And his output has got to be mercurially beautiful in a way that's hard to get your head around unless you see it in person. Monet as Eric Cantona.
Of course, we've taken, a couple of excellent examples there and ruined it for everyone else. Check out chinatownbranch.com to have a look at the prizes that you could win. And if you don't win the prizes, they're very reasonable prints and beautiful paintings. So check that stuff out. I'm genuinely a huge fan. All right, very good. Let's not toss each other off just yet, though.
Gross. All right, so we should do some Twitter questions. Seriously, like in the week, not last week's Rantcast, but the week before, when all the games we had to talk about was a review of QPR and a preview of Norwich, I did so many Twitter questions. I hope that Ed one day cuts them together and releases them as a Twitter question special. It's about half an hour's worth, but we can't do that tonight, unfortunately.
No, we can't. I will be retiring podcasts 144 and 145, of course. There'll be the lost podcast that we'll release posthumously.
So this is 146 then?
Yeah, of course. That's good.
I love it.
I mean, we've still got half of 145 and all of 144.
144 could, in fact, be released in its entirety one day. Shinji Kagawa scored a hat-trick of magnificent beauty against Norwich, and I described it earlier as one of my very favourite hat-tricks of all time at Manchester United, and it was because of the majesty of the finishing, really, and also the fact that all the goals were sort of really nice build-up play, just lovely, and it was the kind of coming of age of Kagawa, to make a really obvious point about it. And at Thomas Stafford, creator of the greatest Manchester United chant-related pun of all time, the football taught by Bill Cosby, asks, what was your favourite United hat-trick? I don't know if it's my favourite of all time, but it's certainly my favourite of recent years. Dimitar Berbatov's hat-trick against Liverpool, because it contained a goal that would have been goal of the season if Rooney's hadn't pulled off a slightly better overhead kick about 3 weeks later or whatever it was. And the fact that Gerrard got Liverpool back into it and kissed the badge, and then Berbatov scored his hat-trick, and he was so maligned and, not exactly taken to heart by all the United faithful, that for him to score a hat-trick against Liverpool was particularly pleasing.
Well, of course, I could pick Michael Owen against VfL Wolfsburg. But I won't because I'm not sure that's my real favourite. Let's be honest about it, It's not the best ever. Dwight York's against Arsenal when United scored 6 was absolutely fantastic. I was there that day. Very, very good hat-trick indeed. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer scored not 3 but 4 right at the end of the Nottingham Forest game when United scored 8 a few years back. That was another fine one. But probably my favourite was the Andrei Kanchelskis hat-trick against Manchester City in 1994 when United won 5-0 and it was all those years after City had scored 5 and finally United kind of turned the tables and did it again and ended 5 years of hurt.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one. Honourable mention, you mentioned hat-tricks against Arsenal. Honourable mention for Lee Sharp with a back-in-the-day hat-trick. Was that in the Rumbelows Cup?
It certainly was. That was a fine one. He scored a fine goal with his right foot into the top corner, I seem to remember.
Yeah, that was pretty special. And you mentioned Ollie's haul, 10-minute haul. Let's call it what it was, legendary 10-minute haul against Nottingham Forest. But I think also that time when Andy Cole scored about 400 goals against Ipswich in the league that one time. That was pretty cool too. At Red Zeppelin 7 asks one word. I'm not clear if this is a question or a comment or both. It's all in capital letters and it's ended by a full stop. And he simply says, Bale.
Of Hay?
Yeah, he's been really, 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 really good lately, Ed. And I'm eyeing him up avariciously.
Well, I'm sure you are, but Spurs' price of around 50 million, plus the fact that they just won't do business with United nicely, and apparently Bale fancies a jaunt in La Liga, means that he's almost certainly going out. So actually, I think Spurs will hold on to him for one more year, because it looks like they're going to end up in the Champions League. And even if they don't, I think they'll do a Modric and hold out for as long as possible. And he's only, 23 or 24, so there's time for both Spurs and Bale, and then they'll flog him to the highest bidder, which will probably be from abroad.
I hope it's us though, Ed. I really do. I think he's a player in the United mould. I believe that for no particularly rational reason.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think we mentioned this before when we were chatting about it. I always thought he was a pretty rubbish left-back. And then he converted into an even more rubbish left winger. And then all of a sudden, he's become an absolutely outstanding left winger. I have to say, I didn't see that one coming.
Are you Harry? Are you Harry? Are you Harry in disguise? At Jack K. Holt asks, Ryan Giggs, what have you ever done 1,000 times?
Come on, this is a family show.
For me, I think attempted to record an episode of a podcast which hasn't come out, although I haven't done it 1,000 times. At the moment, it kind of feels like I have.
Do you think we'll make it to 1,000 podcasts? Can you calculate how many years, how long we've been doing this one? About 3 years or so?
Yeah, 3 years.
For 150-ish podcasts.
First series, we weren't exactly churning them out every week.
Well, let's say we do 40 a year.
Yeah.
And we need to get another 850 under our belts.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good quarter of a century of recording podcasts. Unless some philanthropist, maybe has made a few billion in software or social networks or pornography, fancy sponsoring us to do 2 podcasts a day, then we'll get through it in no time.
Yeah, I think essentially us being able to at least go part-time in our day jobs. I wouldn't want to quit mine altogether, but yeah, without that, it seems to me to be what can only be described as a mathematical long shot. Something which is not quite such a mathematical long shot, but still anything but a foregone conclusion, is Manchester United's progress in the FA Cup. All Reds wanted to win this tournament this season, as far as I could work out. The collective consciousness of Manchester United fandom rose up as one, and as if to say, Fergie, please take this seriously. We haven't won the FA Cup for ages, and it'd be really nice if we could win it, because it's so fun when you win the FA Cup. And we've got the biggest obstacle imaginable coming our way. Rafa Benitez's unstoppable Chelsea side.
Well, right, and Chelsea caused a major shock by knocking out Middlesbrough last time. An even more major shock than Chelsea winning at Middlesbrough. Torres scored.
Chelsea are in weird disarray, but they're not on the worst run of form they've ever been in, and they've got some pretty fantastic players, and you'd think that their sort of rather spoilt, discontented dressing room would get itself together for this one, because this is their season on the line, right?
Well, it is, yeah, and you know, look, they've had pretty decent results recently. I mean, they got pretty easily turned over at Manchester City a couple of weeks back, didn't they? But, I mean, I don't think anyone was particularly surprised about that one. They've not been doing great in the Europa League, I suppose. You know, who really cares about the Europa League? They face a struggle to get that third place in the Premier League, or maybe even not make it into the Champions League at all, I suppose. But it will be a tough game because this is, as you say, Chelsea's season all over. There's some really bizarre stuff going on at Stamford Bridge, though. I mean, interesting analysis, I thought, on Rafa Benitez. One of his former colleagues said that one of the things about Rafa Benitez is that he needs total control. He demands it, and he had a unique situation at Anfield where he got that because the executive management was in total disarray. He's got the exact opposite at Chelsea, where there's not a power vacuum at all. There's no chance of him grabbing power. He will always be dictated to by those above him, and he can't do what he wants. So it was always going to lead to a situation where he went on a rant, which is exactly what he did a couple of weeks ago, and said some very bizarre stuff. And if Chelsea fans could hate him any more than they do now.
Well, me and you clearly represent the polar opposite opinions of Rafa's rant that have been reflected in the media ever since it happened. I actually thought it was a perfectly reasonable retort to the Chelsea fans, saying, what are you doing? You're ruining your team's season. Don't worry about me. I'm not even going to be here at the end of the season. So just get on with supporting the team and just forget about me, because it's not worth your time. It's a waste your time. Don't waste your time with banners. It says just don't waste your time. Said that quite a lot, and that's the point I'm making, and in a slightly amusing way. Rafa clearly feels that the Chelsea fans are wasting their time directing their ire at him, and I think he's right, to be honest. He got this interim job title, which obviously he accepted as being his job title, so that's kind of his fault. But what is he supposed to do? The Chelsea fans are making it really hard for their team at Stamford Bridge, as far as I can work out. There's a really weird atmosphere, and it's sort of... I remember the Carling Cup semi-final, the League Cup semi-final, when Ivanovic made all his mistakes. It was just after, I think, Big Frank was warming up on the touchline, and there was... sort of strange atmosphere around the ground, and it literally translated onto the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Rafa is he's just so easy to mock, and I think that doesn't help him. I don't know whether you've noticed this, but if you look at any article on the BBC about Rafa Benitez or Chelsea, they'll have a picture of Rafa making a really ridiculous face. There's one where it looks like he's on the touchline, but he's desperately trying to crimp one off, right? Because he's so constipated, he hasn't been to the loo in at least a couple of weeks. But at the same time, he's been eating steaks every night. He just looks in desperate pain. There's one where he's doing a bit of Joey style from the Friends Smell the Fart acting and going, oh, it's all calm. There's one where he's got his mouth wide open, like someone is going to shove their fist in there. And there's one where he's got this hangdog expression and his eyes closed, where he's obviously doing some kind of media interview, but he looks like the dog out of the Churchill insurance adverts, and it's just a series of pictures mocking Rafa Benitez, because that's what he's there for. He's there to mock.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless you're Guillaume Balaguer, who has now become one step removed and is now there to mock when Rafael Benitez does something stupid.
Well, he's become a proxy for Benitez because, I don't know, are they brothers from another mother or something? They seem sealed at the hip. There's no finer PR exponent for Rafa Benitez than Guillaume Balaguer. I mean, if Rafa Benitez took a shit in the Stamford Bridge pitch, Guillaume Balaguer would be there with a cloth to clean it up.
I mean, it's funny though, because United fans have gone from holding up Guillaume Balaguer as the be-all and end-all expert on Spanish football from last season when he was defending De Gea and using him as that kind of example all through the season, and now he's defending Benitez, so it doesn't suit our interests, so he's just a Spanish buffoon.
Are you saying that football fans are fickle?
Yeah, I am, and I hate it. It's really silly. Why can't everybody just grow up and act like, sensible grown-up people and apply the same moral logic they do to their own teams they do to other teams? It's never going to happen, is it?
So what about a game? I mean, United got to bounce back from defeat to Real Madrid on Tuesday night. That's going to be pretty tough. I presume there'll be some changes. But look, this is an important competition now. I know United are miles and miles ahead in the Premier League, but in many ways that makes this game even more important because, look, chances are United are going to win the Premier League. It'd be a massive, massive screw-up to not do it now. And the FA Cup's important. We haven't won it for nearly a decade, and that's not acceptable, is it?
No, it's not, because as I said in my pretend wine earlier, it's really fun winning the FA Cup. It's ace, it's brilliant. And my last memory of United in an FA Cup final was so agonisingly painful and horrible and unjust, I felt that injustice weirdly way more than the injustice of the Madrid game, because even though we were on top, I never really thought it was impossible that Madrid would get back into that with 11 versus 11. But Arsenal never, ever deserved to win that game.
No, it's an utterly disgraceful victory, if you can call it that, for Arsenal. And we were definitely the moral victors that day.
For sure. This one is a big game. I think it's the perfect bounce back game from Madrid, because they're a serious opponent, but we're better than them. That's the perfect balance of it, and it's a cup tie, so there can be no complacency. The team have got to get immediately back up for it, and you'd think that it's going to be difficult for the players. The atmosphere is going to be nowhere near what it was on Tuesday night, even a pretty decent atmosphere. It was Sunday afternoon game against a big rival. It just feels like it's weird, isn't it? We're playing Chelsea, who for the last 5 out of the last 7 years or whatever have been our biggest title rivals, and it feels like, after the Lord Mayor's show rolling into town.
Well, yes, it is, and even though it's Chelsea, maybe Benitez will say something ridiculous in the next couple of days and it'll get everyone up for it. That'd be nice, Actually, I hope United score and en masse they go to the Chelsea bench and do the Benitez, the kind of cross your hands, it's all over dance. That was a memorable one, that one. And anything to mock Benitez and get through to the semi-final. This is a great opportunity for United, because Chelsea are a good side, but they're not a great side. They are in some disarray, and you've got to doubt whether Benitez can get them up for this tie in the right way.
I mean, yeah, but I do think their kind of trophy lust will get them up for the tie as well, and they might sense that it's a bit of a decent moment to face United at, because it could go two ways, couldn't it? You've got the wounded animal thing, or the sort of slightly, wounded animal who's not angry but is just slightly less affected, effective even. That was a terrible analogy, but you know what I mean. Either we're going to be good or we're not going to be good. There you go, Halanasis.
Yeah, super stuff that. Well, I think United will win. It's a cliche, Ferguson says it all the time, but there'll be a desire to bounce back, some kind of desperate need for some justice for what happened, and I don't think United will crumble after what happened on Tuesday. I think there's enough determination in this side to achieve good things this season after last season, and as a result I don't think there'll be a negative reaction from Tuesday. I think it'll be a positive one, and as a result United will win, even though there will be some changes. Of course, it'd be really interesting, will Rooney play? Because if he doesn't, it's only going to intensify the stories in the papers.
Yeah, I think given the way that unless he really does want Rooney out in the summer, the way that Fergie handled the extra speculation around De Gea was to play him and put an end to it. So even though it was an FA Cup tie and he may otherwise, in the natural order of things, have rotated Lindegaard back in, I can't help thinking that even if he was planning to think about not playing Rooney, if he is serious about keeping him, he will play him, because they don't really want another week of that being the story. I'm fascinating to see the lineup in this one. There's another week until the next league game, and the next league game is Reading at home. So you would think that he's got every reason to play the best possible side in the FA Cup.
There really is. No one needs to be rested, basically. I mean, I think there will be changes anyway, because it's a different game and different tactics required and all that kind of stuff, and United can be a little more positive, if that's the right word. I mean, certainly you expect United to be on the front foot and retaining the ball much more than against Madrid. So that all points to some changes, but I think it should be a very strong side.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if, I think there'll be obviously numerous changes from the Madrid game because it was such an unusual team selection. But I can't help wondering whether he'll play Hernandez, given Hernandez has been out of the team for such a long time. Robin really does need a rest, or looks like he does to me anyway. And also Hernandez scores against Chelsea.
Yes, I think you're right. I think Van Persie won't play, and that'll give him 10 days off before the Reading game effectively, and that's the right decision. So yeah, and Hernandez does score against Chelsea. I think Hernandez and Rooney will play up front as a result.
Very interesting. I cannot wait for this one. It'd be great to be watching United at Old Trafford again. How were you? How did you feel after that game?
I felt angry at the decision and disappointed by the result. I think that's probably the two emotions that most United fans felt.
Yeah, absolutely. And overall, I mean, I had those two feelings, and I'm stupid and sentimental. You know me, right? I was incredibly proud, like proud to me bones, of the the performance United put together over 2 legs against Madrid, and that tie has really made, and the rest of the season as well, but that tie in particular has really made me reassess where this United team is at, and I think they're basically better than I thought they were.
Well, of course, if they really were that good, they'd have beaten Madrid. Sending off on I hate to bring it back to some facts like that one about Ronaldo actually scoring twice.
No, but this is different because my thing is not that it turns out we're better than Madrid. It turns out we're not as good as Madrid as I thought.
That makes no sense at all. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying. You know, you thought there was a gap between United and Madrid, and it turns out there isn't. And that's perfectly fair assessment. United are a better side than I think many fans thought, and that one is proven in the results.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we've got to finish, but very quickly, the last thing I wanted to say about that is 2 seasons ago we were absolutely taught a footballing lesson by Barcelona, and then Fergie said we've got to do whatever we can to get closer to Barcelona. Then the team very clearly regressed, and last season, even though we lost the league on goal difference with the last kick of the season, essentially, it was still clearly a transitional season for United. You know, it was a transition from the team that was in 2009-10-ish to the team that he's got now, and it's a profoundly different team. It plays in a very different way, and it is on the verge of being yet another truly great Sir Alex Ferguson team, and I did not see that coming, and I feel stupid for not seeing it coming because it comes every time.
Yes, well, we'll see. You know, nothing's actually won yet.
That's why I said on the verge of.
Yes, exactly. Well, let's hope that after the weekend we're on the verge of a FA Cup final by being in a semi-final. That's a really great segue there. Smooth stuff, Ed. That's because I've been out of practice for a couple of weeks. You know, can't record a podcast. So I'm expecting a United win. We haven't done predictions yet, so I'm going to say a 2-0 United win at the weekend and safely through to the FA Cup semi-finals.
I'll go with 3-1. Why not be crazy? I've finally got a prediction right in the Real Madrid game in the podcast that was never released, and it was one I really didn't want to get right. I tell you what, if you want to get us in between now and the next time we release a podcast, which, let's face it, could be any amount of time under the sun the way things have been going, you can get me on Twitter at UTDRantcast, you can get Ed at UnitedRant, get us both, well, neither of us most likely, but occasionally one of us, at facebook.com/UnitedRant. You can get us both at unitedrant.co.uk. And if you have missed the show so much that you think we should quit our jobs and make podcasts full-time, head over to unitedrant.co.uk/donate, and thank you very, very much to everyone that's done that so far. I tell you who is going to be central, as he has been to everything good that Manchester United have done this season, to our chances of getting to an FA Cup semi-final, and who won't be rested, even though he's played game after game after game after game. You know who that is, Ed?
Who's it?
It's Carrick! You'll never believe it's not Scholes!
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.